Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadline so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, the Cloak of Invisibility. Together they make the Deathly Hallows. Together they make one Master of Death. The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living. And above all those who live without love.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. Today we are covering Chapter 4, The Seven Potters. Julie is back with us.
Hi everybody.
Before we get into this mammoth chapter that I think both of us remember reading for the first time, even though it was a minute ago, we do have a couple of shout-outs, but before we even get to the shout-outs, give us your comments on Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, at HogwartsAPod. Check out our YouTube, at HogwartsAPod. Spread the podcast, share the podcast, give us a 5-star review. That'd be really, really nice. Participate in our polls. That also helps grow the podcast. And we will get to two of the comments that were recently left by AV and Tony, two frequent contributors. AV left a comment. Both of these comments were actually on Deathly Hallows Chapter 1, The Dark Lord Ascending. Both of these comments are actually in reference to Voldy is talking about killing Harry Potter, and then there's a dramatic wailing in the background. And Elizabeth thought that they shouldn't be keeping their prisoners so close to an important meeting. I thought it was just dramatic effect. So AV thinks, yeah, they heard everything and wailed upon hearing the kill Harry Potter part. Tony, however, says, I think Dan is correct in the assessment of the wailing. I think it has nothing to do with what Voldy said about Harry. It was just a dramatic point. Julie, what do you think?
But why not both, Dan?
Why not both? You're just going to go right for the center. Okay. Julie, you're a theater person.
I am a theater person.
Do you know in a stage play or a movie when someone says something dramatic and then there's a clap of thunder in the distance and it's like everybody's like, ooh.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is I think it's a mix of that and that, like, fearing part of the plan. Like, I'm sure that it wasn't a, like, he heard it and he shouted out. But I also don't think it was like and then there was a big clap of thunder. I don't know. I'm Switzerland here.
Thank you for those comments, Tony and AV. Keep them coming. Keep hitting us with all your thoughts. We appreciate it. So, this chapter is massive, so let's get into it. We got starting off with Harry taking Hedwig on a tour of the Privet Drive, essentially. Which, if you think about it, really, Hedwig's never actually seen the whole house. She's only ever seen that, like, one bedroom.
Yeah, and the front door to the bedroom, too, I would assume.
Yeah.
But
so, you get, like, him showing her the cupboard where he originally stayed, and now it's full of, like, just things you would normally have in a cupboard, not a child.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird vibe when he's doing it because it's almost like it's nostalgic for Harry, like the whole house. The way that he, like, talks about it is very, like, nostalgic feeling, but he's also saying it with, like, the disdain of, like, how much he hates that's nostalgic for him. But it's like he's at this point where he knows that he's about to be in life or death situations until the end of this new wizarding war, we'll call it. He's, like, nostalgic for when his biggest concern was the fact that he was sleeping in a cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah.
And, like, how terrible is it to sit there and go, like, man, remember when I just, like, was angry that I slept in a cupboard under the stairs? That kind of sounds nice, doesn't it?
He also mentions Dudley a couple times. Remember when Dudley puked on this mat after the Dementor attack? Remember when I had to, like, be woken up by Dudley, like, jumping on the stairs above my head and, like, spiders would rain down and stuff like that? Like, yeah, it was a very weird vibe, but it is a little bit more positive than I would expect him to reminisce on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not long that he gets these moments because the crew then arrives. You get Hagrid, Ron, Hermione, Fred, George, Bill, Arthur, which is like half the Weasleys. Fred, George, Bill, Arthur, Mad-Eye, Tonks, Lupin, Fleur makes an appearance, Kingsley, and one Mundungus Fletcher. 13 total. So, Harry immediately goes up to Kingsley and is like, I thought you were protecting the Prime Minister. And Kingsley's like, yeah, you're more important.
Like, duh. Like, Harry...
The Prime Minister is a pretty important person.
I mean, he is, but in the wizarding world grand scheme of things, like, you're protecting the Prime Minister predominantly so that you don't also have the Muggle world in panic. You're protecting Harry Potter because Harry Potter...
There are more Muggles than wizards, though. So that's an important piece.
Okay, but Harry is the key to saving everybody. Not that everyone knows the fullest extent or details of that, but, like, Harry's the key to saving everyone. Harry, normally I'm critiquing you because your ego is too big. Right now, your ego is too small.
Fair enough. There are some big guns on this crew. I mean, Kingsley's one if he's obviously directed to protect the Prime Minister. I mean, he's a very capable wizard. You obviously have Bill, who's a curse breaker. You have Mad-Eye and Tonks, who are Aurors. So, I mean, you have some really accomplished people on this crew here. Obviously, Hagrid, who's just gigantic. So, in the midst of all of this, greeting and happiness and whatever, Tonks drops the news of her being married to Lupin. Also, you get the description of Tonks being in, like, her bright, like, pink and, like, super happy and bubbly, and then Lupin is over here looking older and grayer than ever. Like, he is... Is this a commentary on marriage, or is this a comment? No, I'm kidding. It's an interesting portrayal that they have there. Yeah. The descriptions of the two of them. But it's nice that Tonks is so up. Like, she's very happy. She's flaunting the ring. She's super, super happy. And then Moody is like, okay, that's great, but pulls a Mulan. Can we get down to business? It's great. He's all business about it. He's like, hey, we can all catch up later or whatever. We have a plan to figure out here. The plan is interesting. As we talked about in the last chapter, it has changed somewhat significantly. So he details that they know that Pius has been flipped at the Ministry. And with that being done, that eliminates Floo powder, Portkeys, and Apparition, because they're all generally monitored by the Ministry.
Yeah, and he's going with the guise of it's protecting Harry's house, so you can't do it there.
Yeah. He's made it illegal to do any of those at the house.
Yeah. Which, honestly, solid plan, Death Eaters.
Yeah, it's a little trickeration on their part, but it's slick. It's a slick move. I wonder who came up with it. Was it Yaxley? Because he was the one that put the Imperius Curse on Pius.
Yeah, true.
So was it Yaxley, or was a directive from Voldy? Or was this a Pius thing of, like, just, this is how we're going to do this?
Well, it's like, or was it that they actually were thinking of that type of protection after the protection spell wore off, and then the Death Eaters were like, wait a minute, let's do that now.
Yeah. And all doing it, like you said, under the guise of, well, we're protecting Harry. This way Voldy can't get to him. Like Voldy is going to be really bound by Floo powder, Portkeys, and Apparition. Yeah. But, yeah. Moody also notes that another complication is the Trace. The Trace is a charm that detects magical activity.
Plot armor. The Trace is plot armor.
Fair enough.
You can finish, Dan, and then I'll die on my hill.
The Trace is a charm that detects magical activity around under 17s. Continue with your rant on the Trace.
I just think that the Trace is used whenever J.K. Rowling feels like it. Because what happens in, like, the Weasleys' household? You have, like, 87 people living in that house. Half of them are underage. So what? If Ron practices spell work, you're going to be like, oh, underage wizard. No, because there's also 300 of age wizards in that house. I just feel like it's constantly used as a, like, okay, but how does Harry get caught? Oh, the Trace, there's a Trace. There's a Trace. Let's use the Trace. And that's what this feels like again, is the like, hey, none of us can use the Trace in this house. Because then they'll use the trace to find you and they'll know that we're getting you out of here. The trace wasn't used at all when the Fort Angelica came to break Harry out of the house in Chamber of Secrets. No, it wasn't important then. Okay, great.
That's fair. Fort Angelica might actually be your best argument for that. That was also around Dobby, right? That was around the same time Dobby was causing problems also with the trace and being like, what are you doing?
Which they didn't say anything about until...
So Harry brings this up at some point to Dumbledore. And Dumbledore was like, well, the trace is tricky because most wizarding households, like you're bringing up the Burrow.
Yeah.
So at any given point, there are multiple adult wizards in and out of the Burrow, whether it's Molly and Arthur or Bill, who's above age, or Charlie, or whatever. So they depend on wizarding parents to employ that law or that rule because they can't differentiate whether it was Ginny or Arthur doing the magic.
Plot armor!
Yeah. That was, I guess, her attempt at trying to explain away that, like, plot armor loophole. But, yeah, the trace is maybe more complicated than it needs to be. It's a little different here in that, generally, I don't think they care as much with a random Muggleborn doing something when they're under 11, because that happens.
Yeah.
But in this particular scenario, they are very much watching Harry Potter. They are very much targeting a specific individual and the general area around him and being like, if there's any magic in like a 3-block radius of this kid. By the Dursleys and Harry choosing to leave and not come back together, they are
and being under the understanding that they will probably never live together again.
Right. They are thus breaking the charm early that's around Privet Drive. So they will instead of using basic magic, they will use brooms, thestrals, and Hagrid's motorbike. They have leaked a fake date to the Ministry, the 30th of July, the day before Harry's 17th birthday, which is the date that Yaxley mentioned in Chapter 1. So Yaxley has clearly gotten that message and forwarded it to Voldy and the Death Eaters.
I feel like the members of the Order are a little too self-assured of their like plan, where they're like, we leaked a fake date to the Ministry, so no one will guess we'll be here tonight.
Moody tries to be like, we can't assume that Voldy is just going to be like a different date, and they're basically literally playing chess. They're like, one makes a move and then the other makes a counter and then counter. The problem is the best player of chess is not there anymore, and that is Dumbledore. Yeah,
well, and I also think that the Order sees Voldemort as the only chess player and that the Death Eaters are just pawns. So I think they all also think that the only person that they have to outsmart is Voldemort. They don't have to outsmart the Death Eaters.
Yeah, that's valid. I think it's not so much they think the individual Death Eater is not smart. They definitely think they're violent, but I think that even if the Death Eater themselves are individually smart or intelligent, they wouldn't dare do something of their own accord.
Yeah.
So everything that's being done is Voldy.
Yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of like little nuances in their plan as we like get through it that are things that are like, guys, come on, that one was a little obvious.
I think some are smart, and we'll get to one where I think we're actually going to agree that is a misstep by the Order, but we'll get through it. This next part I think is actually pretty clever. They've given a dozen houses every protection possible, making them look like a plausible safe house. This includes all things related to the Order generally: Moody's house, Kingsley's house, Auntie Muriel's house, the Burrow, things like that. So Harry will get sent to Tonks's parents' house, and then eventually Portkey to the Burrow.
Yeah, which seems weird that they also couldn't track that, which, again, with, like, the trace and all the magic tracking, it just feels very, like, inconsistent.
Well, so they made it illegal at Privet Drive, at the house.
Yeah.
So everything in that, so they're bouncing locations. It's like using a VPN.
Well, I mean, like, no,
I
get why they're doing it at Tonks's house versus at Privet Drive, but it also seems weird that they just did it with another thing that can be tracked.
The Portkey? Yeah. Maybe the Portkey just signifies, it doesn't know where you went, it just knows that a Portkey was used.
Yeah, maybe.
There, but And I think that's why, so you might also bring up that, well, I'm sure the Death Eaters can figure out that they're going to some member of the Order. I'm sure they all have every member of the Order staked out.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have every place marked. So I think the port key then is the answer. Like, okay, we're all going to a member of the Order's house. Then from there, port key.
Yeah.
And where we port key to is then the question mark that no one knows.
Yeah.
So even though they're going to the Burrow, which
like, the most obvious choice.
That I'll give you is somewhat ridiculous. But they're playing up to that point, I think is actually pretty good. So this is the little, let's say, spice that Moody throws onto this whole plan. Because Harry has the obvious question of, like, that's all fine and good. But once they see everybody going to one place, or they see me specifically going to one place, well, that's kind of an indicator.
Yeah.
And Moody's like, yes, good point. However, we're going to have 7 Harry Potters moving through the skies tonight. And each will fly with a companion. And Harry sees where this is going and is like, no. I do not approve of this plan.
Hermione's response to it is my favorite, though, because she's like, I told him that you weren't going to take this well.
And Ron is like, look, this is not the first time we've risked our lives for you, Harry. And Harry says, this is different to be me. I think Ron is well within his rights to say, dude, this is not the first time I've risked my life for you. But I think Harry has a real point here of like, no, this is different. They are targeting me. So to become me, you are putting yourselves in a whole other level of danger here.
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
No, he's not. But at the same time, like, I feel like this is one of those moments where it's like you just kind of want to, like, slap Harry upside the head because you're like, I get it, but what did you think was going to happen to protect you? Even if they just came here to fight the Death Eaters, like, it's still the same level of threat. Arguably worse because nobody cares about the other members of the Order. They care about you. And if directive is that only Voldemort can kill you, then them being disguised as you actually buys them time.
Moody does make the point later where he's like, really the protectors are the biggest target because no one wants to kill you. They want to capture you.
Yeah.
So if you're really the protector, you're in more danger than if you're actually Harry Potter. But anyway, I do like Harry standing up and being like, wait a minute, this is different. If you're all doing this, be very aware that this is different. But
at the same time, Moody brings it up that he's willing to take the hair by force. Like, and I forget who it is that someone's like, sir, everyone besides you is of age and can use magic. So not only are you outnumbered, but you're essentially a muggle who's outnumbered. Yeah. Even though we just talked about how because of the trace you can't use magic in the house, but it's fine. Yeah. It's just
none
plot
of them
armor.
can technically use magic here. But I think Fred and George are like, let's see. The 13 of us against the one of you, we'll get the hair. Yeah. Moody says he's willing to use force. They've all prepared to take the risk. And he goes, even you-know-who can't split himself into 7. And Harry and Hermione share a look of like, oops. Like, well, about that. Anyway, so we get to the transformation. And Harry's Polyjuice potion turns a bright, clear gold.
How's that for some symbolism, Dan?
Look at that. Yeah, right? Harry is pure, like right in your face.
The golden boy.
So we get the fake Potters. You get Ron, Hermione, Fred, George, Fleur, and Mundungus becoming Harry Potter. And obviously, Harry. So those are your 7 Harry Potters. Did you think Fleur volunteered for this, or how did they think they pitched it to Fleur?
I think she volunteered because she was like, well, if Bill's going, I'm going.
Mm-hmm. She didn't want to be left on the sidelines like last time?
Like, she has a connection with Harry already, so I think that it's, if Bill's going, I'm going. And Bill was probably like, well, you're not going to be the other companion for somebody, because I need to watch out for you. And I think that's how they get paired together, which I also think
they're also a couple that's about to get married.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's all remember, though, that also Fleur is very capable in her own right. Yeah. She was a champion of her school for the Triwizard Tournament. She's capable. So we get that quote from Moody about the protectors being in more immediate danger than a Potter because Mundungus is like, I'm not sure about this whole idea.
I love that they brought him when no one actually trusts him, and they're like, yeah, come on.
So this is where I think we'll agree. I think the biggest flaw in the whole plan is Mundungus Fletcher because he clearly doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Why would you bring anyone, on the biggest mission you have up to this point that isn't committed? Mm-hmm. Why couldn't you send Hestia, Jones, and Mundungus with the Dursley? At least for tonight. You can switch them out later if you need to.
Well, I mean, you took Kingsley off of protecting the Prime Minister.
Is this the best we got? Can you find anybody better than Mundungus Fletcher?
I mean, at this point, you might as well just grab a muggle off the street and be like, hey, you're drinking this? Sit on this broomstick. Cool.
Yeah, I don't understand why they brought him if he's not committed. Because, we just talked about Fleur.
I just feel like there's a lot of flaws in the plan for what is, one of the most important
This is my big one.
There.
Why are you bringing someone who's not fully committed? Mm-hmm. The rest of them are fully committed. They have stake in the game.
Yeah.
He does not. So why include him? There's got to be a better option.
Yeah.
There has got to be. But anyway, as we're going through the transformation, they all begin. You can't just take the Polyjuice potion. You also have to dress alike. You have to do that whole bit. So they all begin stripping. And Ron, of all people, goes I knew Ginny was lying about the tattoo. I'm sorry, weren't you living with him the last 6 years? In a dorm? I'm sorry, what? So
I was also laughing that Harry's I wish you all could be a little less comfortable stripping as me. Thank you.
It's just ridiculous.
I was also surprised Hermione brought up that Harry actually does have terrible eyesight. I'm surprised that the Polyjuice potion also gives you the person's ailments.
Yeah, it gives you everything. So, I mean, it's so you're becoming that person. So you get their nearsightedness because whatever.
Yeah, that I never thought of it that way. I just thought it was a full looks thing. But
the real comment comes from Fred and George. Wow, we're identical, which is just hilarious. They always seem to put just the right amount of humor into the situation. But I do like how, as they're all changing, Harry just being I wish they'd take into account my privacy and my body. Because they're just throwing it all out there. And yeah, it's a little crazy. But after this transformation scene, which is great in the movie, I think they did it really, really well in the movie. Mm-hmm. You get the pairs. So Moody is with Mundungus because Moody needs to keep an extra eye on Mundungus.
Which, again, flaw in the plan because you have Moody, who's one of the strongest, I would say, of the group.
Yep.
Pretty much just watching the person that you think is going to run away.
Well,
which, in this plan, I don't even think it would be bad if Mundungus ran away because people might go oh, maybe they told Harry to go a different direction and you go after him.
Maybe, yeah.
At this point, you might as well just go.
Lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moody is with Mundungus, and they are going by broom. Arthur and Fred are together by broom. Lupin and George are together by broom. You get Bill and Fleur on a thestral. You get Kingsley and Hermione on a thestral.
Both of those because the girls are not comfortable on brooms. And obviously everyone knows that Harry is very comfortable on a broom. So you don't want to throw them off the scent by having people who are this broom is flying.
Yeah, there's some strategy into who's on the broom, who's on the thestral, who's in the motorbike. You get Tonks and Ron, who will be on a broom, and Ron feels very awkward about putting his arms around Tonks while on the broom, which is adorable. And then you get Hagrid and the actual Harry Potter on the motorbike with Harry in the sidecar.
I strongly disagree with this choice. I think this is one of the biggest, you put Harry with the one person who isn't actually trained in magic, can't actually use magic, and everyone knows Harry's connection to Hagrid.
Here's where I disagree. And it's basically 2 points. One, Hagrid has shown a resistance to most spells. So he's fairly durable, won't get knocked off the motorbike, won't become unconscious or whatever from a flippant spell. That's number one. Number two, Hagrid, as Dumbledore has attested to on many occasions, is a fervent protector. Like, that is a inherent trait in his personality, is a protector, and particularly of Harry. He is a fervent, aggressive protector of Harry Potter. The only knock I have on Harry going in the motorbike, and specifically the sidecar, is Harry's arguably, maybe not arguably, the best defensive magic spell worker amongst the quote-unquote Harry Potters in this group. And you're confining him to a sidecar where it's like hard to maneuver, it's hard to like... Whereas on a Thestral or a broom, he's allowed more mobility.
But I also wonder if that's why they have him in the sidecar, because they know that Harry will, if there's an attack, Harry's going to, if he was on a broom, he would be turning around.
Like, he'd want to re-enter the fight?
Yeah.
That's fair. I get that they're wanting to take him off of a broom, because the Death Eaters would be expecting that.
Yeah.
They would expect you to put Harry Potter in his quote-unquote best scenario.
Yeah, which I'm also confused as to why Harry took his firebolt instead of having one of the fake Harrys who's on a broom riding the firebolt, because that seems like a better distraction.
Well, I have issues with how that went. So you're stuffing this kid into a sidecar with a rucksack, with a firebolt, with Hedwig's cage. Why don't you just let her out and fly?
Yeah.
Like, just let her go? Why do you have her in the cage in this moment? Mm-hmm. Why have you had to, like, let her go days before this?
Yeah.
like, let her go.
Tell her how to, like, tell her to get to the burrow and you'll see her when you see her. We'll get to Hedwig.
We'll get to Hedwig in a second. We still got some other stuff going on. Well, first of all, which would you prefer to be on? Which would you, if you had the choice, broom, Thestral, or motorbike? Gotta ask you this question. I have to.
Yeah. I'm going to say broom, because I think broom gives me the most control of the situation. Because the Thestral is still an animal. It can still get spooked. It can still get scared. It can still go a different way.
That's true.
The motorbike is just too clunky. I think the broom makes them... I would rather be on a broom. This is assuming that I'm skilled at flying a broom.
I was going to say, if I was used to a broom, I would say broom. If I wasn't, I'd pick the motorbike. But, first of all, Hagrid's the motorbike ride in Universal, fantastic. Big fan. But this is the other thing, speaking of Harry and the decision to put him on the motorbike, I think a good position for him would be a Thestral, because he could see the Thestrals. Like, he'd be comfortable with the Thestral. He's ridden them to London before.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
That was also, I think that makes the most sense to put Harry on, would be the Thestral, purely because my assumption as a Death Eater would be he's really good at flying, so he's probably flying. But if he's not flying, he's 1,000% with Hagrid on that motorbike.
Yeah. The only problem is, as you said, animal. You could kill the animal too.
Yeah.
And then you're in trouble.
And I'm assuming most of the Death Eaters can see them.
Well, you can see the two people. Yeah. Well, I guess they're all disillusionment charms too, as well, right? They're not all perfectly visible.
True.
They'd be like little glimmers in the darkness.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to see them, but anyway. So we get all of that. We get Death Eaters expecting Harry to be on a broom. Harry grabs the rucksack, the firebolt, and Hedwig's cage to stuff it into the sidecar, which looks hilarious because he's so much lower than everybody else. Also, he's reminded of the fact that the last time he was on this particular bike, A, it's Sirius's old bike, and B, he was a baby.
I'm not crying, Dan, you are.
He was a baby when he was last on this bike with Hagrid, who brought him over. So a lot of little details strewn about here in this early chapter, and we're not even really halfway through this chapter, which is crazy. We get the journey. Okay, so this is when this chapter gets bumped up a notch. As Privet Drive is beginning to disappear below, Julie, at least 30 hooded figures surround the Order as they pop into the clouds. 30 minimum. Mm-hmm. That's a massive number.
Well, but think of it, though. If you're the Death Eaters, like, you know that it's not going to be, one person going to get Harry and bringing him back. You know that the Order is going to have some level of force with them. And you're playing chess, not checkers. You're going, okay, well, who do we reasonably think that they've got? Let's double it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big number.
And I mean, think about it. This is, this could be like endgame for them. So if you go, you know what? Whatever else you people were doing, you're not doing it anymore. You're showing up here.
Yep. Well, chaos erupts as green lights flare all around them.
So much for not trying to kill him.
All over the place.
Okay, here's my question for you, Dan. What do you think would be worse if a Death Eater was unable to capture Harry Potter, or if a Death Eater killed Harry Potter? Because they're just throwing these killing curses out there. You don't know if it's going to hit the actual Harry, the fake Harry,
each other.
Yeah, the protectors.
Yeah.
You don't know who it's actually hitting. So what's worse? If they don't catch Harry, or if Yaxley accidentally kills Harry instead of Voldemort doing it? Which has a worse punishment?
Well, I would say what would be worse is probably killing him. I would say killing him would actually probably be worse. Because you're taking Voldy's kill.
Yeah.
And I think he would be particularly upset about it.
Yeah.
I don't think you're surviving that, honestly. This, you might get tortured a little bit. Like, if you let him go,
Yeah.
a little, I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth. A little light torture. and then you move on with your business. I think he would kill the person that killed him.
Yeah.
I really do. But anyway, so as the green lights flare, Hagrid, spins this bike, tries to get out of the way of all these spells coming at him. Broomstick falls to the earth. So the firebolt's gone. He catches the rucksack and catches the cage barely. Here's my thing. Again, why are these 3 items loose in his sidecar? You're telling me someone couldn't, Moody had a couple of sacks. You can magically enlarge this. Mm-hmm. You could put them away. You could, whatever, tie this somewhere. I don't know. There's just ways to put these things away in a more secure...
My guess, though, is that they wanted to make sure Harry was carrying something so you wouldn't automatically assume the Harrys that had nothing were fake.
Just give them a sack to carry or something that. I just
don't like... drawstring bag.
Yeah, for real. The idea of 3 loose items in the sidecar with them is a stupid idea for me.
To me, the broom is also the biggest giveaway, is that, Harry's just holding on to his broom. Yeah. Because you don't have the Harrys that are on the Thestrals holding brooms.
Also, it's also a little way for her to be he doesn't have the broom anymore. So if stuff does go sideways, he doesn't have that out of just being hopping on my broom and taking off, He's stuck, essentially. Yeah. As he catches the rucksack in the cage, there is a burst of green light, and Hedwig screeches and falls to the floor of the cage.
No, I hate this. I hate this so much. It makes me so angry. This is pretty close to on par for me with Sirius Black's death. Because I think this is one of the most heart-wrenching and pointless deaths in this book.
Do you remember when you first read this? Do you remember your first reaction?
Pure shock. We were on chapter 4 of the book, and it wasn't some Felonious Feather Duster died today.
Charity Burbage in chapter 1.
Your first actual character. Hedwig? Why? And the reason, going back and rereading it, part of the reason that makes me so angry about it too is again, it's almost like plot armor, because it's well, what are you going to do with Hedwig for the rest of this book?
Well, she's had trouble in the last couple of books figuring out what to do with Hedwig. Yeah. In book 6, she was barely in there at all.
Yeah.
If at all.
And so it almost feels like well, I don't know how Hedwig's going to come on this journey, so somebody's got to go. And it's also so quick that if you're not paying attention while you're reading, because we all do it. When we're reading something and we're I just want to read it. I want to know how it ends. Let's go. And then all of a sudden you go back and reread the book. It happens to us all the time on this podcast that we're I didn't even notice that. And I honestly feel in this chapter, you could miss it.
You could even, I think when I first read this, I was reading these words and I remember holding out hope. I was like, well, maybe. Like, maybe she's not dead. Maybe. We'll continue on. Harry, predictably, wants to turn back and help the others. He's screaming to Hagrid, hey, let's go back. And Hagrid, doing his job, is like, no, I have a job to do. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm getting you out of here. Which is correct. That's the way to do it.
In reality, they should have just, put a sleeping curse on Harry, threw him in one of the bags, and left. Come on. That would have been the easiest way to get him out of there. You walk in, you're like, hey, take the sleeping potion. We'll see you in 2 hours. You're going into our little sack.
The problem is, as I said, he's at least the 8th best wand that you have in this.
Fair. Yeah.
In this dual scenario.
Yeah, but you could have done this just as a changing in the guard. Today's Kingsley's day to watch Privet Drive.
We end up getting 4 Death Eaters pursuing the motorbike. So 4 out of 30. That's actually a pretty... So clearly, if you're going with their plan has seemed to work, because none of them believed that he'd be stuffed in a sidecar on a motorbike. Mm-hmm. So if only 4 of 30 actually chase it, you're doing your job right.
Yeah.
And Harry is shouting stupefy as Hagrid presses a green button, creating a solid brick wall coming out of the back of this motorbike. Arthur did just a few little tweaks from Arthur, but a solid brick wall erupts from the back of the motorbike, eliminating one of the 4 Death Eaters. Crashes into it, broom splinters, he falls. One of the Death Eaters swoops down to try to save him, so now we got 2 Death Eaters following them. When a second button is pushed by Hagrid, this one casts a giant net behind the motorbike, which, stunningly, the Death Eaters have learned very quickly, hey, maybe we should, take this bike a little bit more cautiously.
If he pushes the button, back up.
Yeah. So it actually misses the Death Eaters that are still chasing them. And Hagrid presses the large purple button, which causes dragon fire to erupt from the back of it. Can we just pause, and just bow down to the greatness of Arthur Weasley, who's got a brick wall popping out of the back of a motorbike, a giant net, and dragon fire?
Yeah.
This dude is a genius.
Loved making this every second of this.
Where did Arthur come out of with this genius, booby trap James Bond car? This is crazy. Anyway, I digress. So the dragon fire actually backfires on them by splitting the motorbike and the sidecar completely apart. Hagrid attempts to fix the situation.
Which, again, I love Hagrid, and I just don't think that he was the right choice to have the actual Harry.
Harry's got to be quicker on the draw here.
Yeah.
Harry has got to be quicker on the draw by using Reparo. He is not. Hagrid tries, and that causes even more damage. So now Harry is floating in the air in a sidecar.
Using Wingardium Leviosa.
This is purely a way to call back a spell from early on. This is the only reason.
Harry always uses the simplest magic and always gets away with it. But
it works.
Don't worry, I'll be able to rail on this more in a little bit. So
it floats the sidecar for enough time for Hagrid to swing back around and literally pluck him from the sidecar and put him on the back of the motorbike with the rucksack cages left in the sidecar. And Harry sees a Death Eater following behind, and he hits that Death Eater with Impedimenta, which is great. Before he's plucked from the sidecar, he does lose a tooth by dodging a curse. So now he's got a tooth missing and just blood all over. As the sidecar falls to the ground, as Harry's now on the motorbike with Hagrid, Harry decides to blow up the sidecar using Confringo. Thus, any hope that I had of Hedwig possibly still surviving, that is now extinguished.
That's awful. That's terrible. Again, I will never get over this. There are 2 things that I will never get over.
And this is one of them.
Yeah. Everyone else already knows the other. If you've listened to me on any episode of this podcast, you know what else I can't get over, so...
Harry blows up the sidecar. He does knock 2 Death Eaters to the ground below by blowing it up because they were closing in on the sidecar. So, that was successful, but in doing so, Hedwig is now confirmed, definitely not with us. So, as he's on the back of the motorbike, Harry repeatedly uses stunning spells to try to just... And at random, he's like firing them at random through the darkness because he can't quite see all of the Death Eaters that might be following him. Until a Death Eater in robes comes up to him. The hood falls as he dodges one of Harry's stunning spells. And Harry sees the blank face of Stan Shunpike chasing after him. If you are unfamiliar with one Stan Shunpike, he's working for the night bus and was captured by Rufus for talking about Death Eater plans. Taken to Azkaban. I believe it was in Azkaban for that. Now he's clearly out of Azkaban. Harry does note that he sees the blank face, though, which lets you know that this might not be Stan Shunpike. This might be like an Imperious Curse type of thing. So there is that description, which is important. But after seeing the face of Stan Shunpike, Harry now switches up his strategy from randomly using...
being the dumbest person on the planet.
No, we'll disagree on this. But Harry switches from using stunning spells to his signature spell, Expelliarmus.
That's him! The real one! This plant has so many flaws, Dan.
The Death Eaters trailing him, seeing him use Expelliarmus, are like, that's him, that's the one. And
my favorite is that Harry goes, how did they know? Bro, you are a one-trick pony. Anytime your back is up against a wall, you disarm.
No.
Yes.
No, because they've told you here. He's used stunning spells repeatedly throughout this entire encounter. It's the one time where he sees someone he knows is not who they are. Stan Shunpike's not a Death Eater. He's an imprisoned captive that they're using to puppet around, trying to attack his friends and the family that he has. So he decides to be merciful here. Harry's merciful. I don't call this a stupid thing. He's becoming merciful at this point.
Stunning him isn't killing him, Dan.
Yes, it is, because they're hundreds of feet above the earth. If he falls to the earth, he is dead. He is dead.
Nope.
And I don't know that Death Eaters are going to swoop down and save Stan Shunpike. They might save one of their own. They're not going to save this guy.
I get that they had to change it up last minute because it seemed like their plan, like the Death Eaters figured out their plan. But I feel like there's a lot of very obvious.
Well, I mean, let's break it down. Like, the choice to not put Harry on a broom, I think, was successful because only 4 of 30 started chasing them. Yeah. So that worked. The 7 Potters also worked because there was mass confusion everywhere. Yeah. So that also worked. So you're 2 for 2 on your plan. The idea of Harry using Expelliarmus, that I don't think that anybody considered that because it's a chaotic war-like situation. He was using stunning spells. He was going for quote-unquote kills when you're hundreds of feet above the ground. You stun somebody, they're done. Yeah. So, I mean, he was going for quote-unquote kill shots. It's just when he saw someone that he knew, like if this was Dolohov or Yaxley, he's still using that stunning spell. Yeah. So I don't...
One-trick pony.
No, you can't say a one-trick pony. He's using other spells. And Stupefy, if you want to use Stupefy as a one-trick pony, he uses that a ton.
Okay, but there's only one spell that the second anyone says it that looks like Harry Potter, they're like, him.
But why? So here's why that's the call out, is because he decided to use that one time, really. He decided to use that one specific time in the graveyard in Goblet of Fire, which was a weird time to use that spell, and it signaled everybody like, oh, he's willing to use that then? Interesting. So as much as you might want to call Death Eaters not the brightest of the bunch, they remembered something from 3 years ago where they're like, hey, that's a thing.
Because he does it all the time.
Not all the time.
Dan, he does it all the time.
All the time. Does not use
anyway,
all the time.
He does it all the time. Everyone knows.
I disagree. But, so the 2 Death Eaters that fall back end up appearing later with Voldy, who's flying like smoke on the wind, which would be just a terrifying sight. And so terrifying. Like, think about this for a second. It's so terrifying that Harry notes that Hagrid bellows in fear.
Mm-hmm. So I would think because Hagrid always had that, like, fear of saying his name, like, earlier on, that, like, then you actually see him. Like, it's one thing to always be, like, fighting against him, but when it's, like, Oh, okay. It's him and me now. Great.
You're talking about an individual in Hagrid who walks himself into the Forbidden Forest where he knows centaurs want to do him harm. Acromentulas want to do him harm. This is a man who is afraid of precious little in his life. And to invoke fear in him, you are terrifyingly frightful. Mm-hmm. I think we can all agree on that. That is just the visage of him, not on Thestral, not on Broom, not on anything else. He is flying of his own accord on like smoke on the wind. That is horrifying. So that's just the image of him. But Hagrid, bless him, launches himself off of the bike onto one of the Death Eater's brooms and takes the broom and the Death Eater down with him.
I don't... Okay.
To be fair, the Death Eater had caught up and was pointing a wand directly in Harry's face.
Yeah.
That was going to be the end of Harry.
Yeah. So
Hagrid was like, nope, and just yeeted himself off of the bike to go take out that Death Eater. So he was successful. Which, that, as much as I just said he was afraid of Voldy, that takes a tremendous amount of courage to just be like, you know what? Forget everything. I'm protecting this kid. And just dive off into the unknown. I mean, that's crazy. Now, we get this. We get this scene where Voldy now catches up to the bike. And he is about to kill Harry Potter. This is that moment. He is like halfway through the Avada part of it. Right?
End of book.
3.5 chapters in. Harry's wand acts of its own accord as Voldy moves to kill him. Golden fire erupts from Harry's wand. You just hear this "no" being exclaimed by Voldemort. He seems to have at least put distance between himself and Voldy at the very, very least. Mm-hmm. And Voldy's not happy about it. But now Harry is like full on plummeting to the earth in this bike. And he tries so hard to be Accio Hagrid. He tries to bring Hagrid back, which...
You know what? He should have pulled out that spell. But you know what? I lied, Dan. Harry is a 2-trick pony. Ugh.
He tries. He tries to get Hagrid back. I think that's an emotional plea than anything else. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. And while he's doing that, you can hear in the background Voldy being like, Selwyn, give me your wand. Selwyn being an actual Death Eater. Like, he's lineage-based Death Eater. Yes. Like, Slytherin through and through. He's been there, done that. Doesn't happen in time. And Harry crashes as Hagrid is spread out on the ground below. And that's where the chapter ends. So that is that's an ominous way to end the chapter.
Yeah.
So that's where we end. Do you have any other things you want to double back on through all of this? Or do you want to get to the spoilers?
I think the spoilers, and also that the Trace's plot armor, and I will never forgive J.K. Rowling for Hedwig, and that Harry knows 2 spells.
I disagree on one of those, at least fervently. But anyway, we will get to the spoiler section. We will be right back after this break. Before we get to our break sound, I'd like to acknowledge our friend Andy, who helps us produce our intros and our break sounds. If you want to hear more of Andy's work and like Formula One racing, check out the Outlap F1 podcast. It's your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. You can find them wherever you listen to podcasts, and they even have a YouTube page. So check out Andy, Cody, John, James, and Deanna, and join them on the Outlap.
Dobby has no master. Dobby is a free elf.
All right, so we're back with the spoiler section of Chapter 4, The Seven Potters. And we have a lot of wand talk here in the spoiler section. So I'm going to go back to a comment from AV, actually, who left it on his Chapter 1, The Dark Lord Ascending comment. He asks, unless a wand is taken, then it won't work properly. I think the answer is that Voldy telling to give him the wand is a forceful take. So Voldy telling Lucius to give him the wand is a forceful take, and that's what gives Voldy the wand's loyalty. Mm-hmm. And then AV asks, what are your thoughts? Julie, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think it works as a forceful take. And I mean, I think we see a lot of kind of gray, foggy areas in some of the like magic that's like transferring between people.
Sure. A little blurred.
Yeah, but my gut tells me that it's kind of as long as you have taken it with some level of intent of possession. Because I'm just thinking, like, at Hogwarts, will they take away your wand like they take away your cell phone? Like, if you're in, like, History of Magic, you don't necessarily need your wand.
Right.
So if you're, like, making birds fly above your head or something, are they like, yep, I'll take that? I can't imagine that would, like, transfer the power. But if you're purposely doing it to, like, remove magic from that person for a longer period of time. Like, if you're Molly Weasley and you take Ginny's wand away during the summer because she can't use magic at home, I don't think that would give any type of, like, transference of power. Forceful take, but you're doing it as a, like, no, you don't need this right now. Not as a, like,
I'm taking this for good.
Yeah.
I think the key is an unwilling transfer. Because Lucius doesn't want to give up his wand.
Yeah.
And the implication is, if he doesn't, he ceases to live.
Yeah.
So it's, while it seems like Voldy just asked for the wand and Lucius just gave it over,
that's
not really what was implied.
Yeah.
It was, you're going to give me your wand. Like, I am taking this from you. You're not willingly giving this to me.
Yeah.
And I think the unwilling part is really the key to the whole transfer. You're not giving this to me out of the kindness of your heart. I am still taking this from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, and the AV, and we thank you for the comment. As always, please leave the comments on Spotify, Twitter, Instagram. Find us at Hogwarts a Pod. Let's continue with Wand Talk, though.
Yes.
Because I think both, at least I remember on my first read of this interaction between Voldy and Harry at the end of this chapter, was confusion. I'm like, so the wand acted of its own accord and then shot golden flames. And Julie has not been, I have been a defender of Harry's use of defensive magic and how good he is at it. However, the golden flames erupting from his wand, I think, might be a touch beyond his abilities.
Yeah, and I mean, it says that it acted of its own accord, and the thing that still is confusing to me is I feel like this is another, like, weird... J.K. Rowling kind of had this idea, so she threw it in there, but it's not really fully, in my opinion, integrated into anything. It seems weird that both of us would question, hey, a wand moving on its own and erupting golden flames. Do we remember if we were told about that?
Well, especially because Voldy is not using his own wand. Like, if you're doing the twin core thing,
yes,
which Ollivander gets into later, it's like, oh, twin cores, they might react differently. And that's what Ollivander has been telling Voldemort about.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you might not be able to kill him because the way your wands work, they might repel each other.
Fratricide, essentially.
Yeah. So the twin cores, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So that's why Voldy takes Lucius's wand. So my confusion when reading this is, or at least the first time, was, well, how does that work? Because now he's not using the twin cores. Shouldn't that just not happen?
Yeah, and it also seems weird that Harry's wand recognize, like, I get the wand chooses the wizard, so there's inherently some connection between the wand and the wizard.
There's some sentience to the wand on some level.
But it also just seems weird to me that the wand goes, nope. No, sir. You can't fool me. I know that you are the owner of my twin. Not happening. It doesn't feel satisfying to me.
So obviously after this interaction, Harry becomes very intimately protective of the wand. And he's like, this wand is like the whole thing. I can't lose this wand. Otherwise, I can't duel Voldy. Spoiler alert, it gets broken at some point and unusable. And eventually...
Harry breaks a lot of, like, random possessions.
To be fair, he's in a lot of situations that things can be broken.
I mean, yeah. But I was just thinking about it. I was like, he's broken how many brooms? The wand.
How many bones? His own bones. But Albus gives the explanation of this in that limbo setting after Harry dies, and Harry brings it up, and Albus explains it this way. The wand sensed Voldemort's presence both as quote-unquote brother and quote-unquote mortal enemy, and reacted, despite the fact that Voldemort has switched wands. So I'm assuming, if that's the explanation we're given, that the wand was able to recognize that a piece of Voldy is in Harry, and Voldy
is also attacking Harry.
Also has the twin Phoenix core wand normally, so the wand is recognizing hey, wait, this is a similar but different. I can't have you kill each other yet, so it's just I think we're both agreed it's a little flimsy.
Yeah,
it's a little flimsy. I don't know that I fully buy it. I don't think I've ever loved this.
No.
I don't think I've ever liked it.
I'm fine with, there being some sort of, the wands are brothers and they also realize the connection of Harry and Voldemort, but I feel like it's a little too... It's too far for me.
It comes across as a little bit of a stretch to me. When I first read it, and on my whatever read now, I still don't love this.
Yeah, I feel like it comes across like J.K. Rowling was writing the chapter and was like, and Voldemort appears, and then they're going to battle, and then something has to happen.
I think you get into this book, you get a lot into, you dive deep into wand lore here.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that's what maybe that's a setup. Maybe it's a setup to the wand lore. And maybe that's how we should take it.
I just feel like it's very, what are you going to do at this point that hasn't already happened? Because you can't have Harry, throw Expelliarmus again and have that reaction happen. You can't, have Harry, stupefy Voldemort. What do you do to stop Voldemort when... you still have how many other chapters in this book to figure out how to stop Voldemort? So it feels very okay, well, how do we get rid of him? The wand can do stuff.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys think about this. Clearly, Julie and I are not fans of the Golden Flame wand doing its own thing moment.
I don't like wands doing their own magic.
It's a little weird. So you let us know. Like I said, comment, Twitter, Instagram, everything, Spotify.
Yeah, you know what? I'd feel better about it if there was, a couple of sentences added that, almost Harry was, possessed by his wand. I
would feel better if it was more of a if it, like you mentioned the instance in Goblet of Fire, I would have been better with a Priory and Cantum again.
Yeah.
But do you really want to dive back to the previous plot point?
No, I don't know that I necessarily want that, but, even if it was just the wand, Harry just kind of felt that he needed to flick his wrist a certain way and it happened. It's still the one doing it, but I like more that it's
instinctual.
Yeah,
out
that
of nowhere.
the wand kind of gave Harry this instinct of how to protect himself.
A boost of power and I get you.
That I could get more, but this whole it realizes that you're a brother even though the brother isn't here.
For a piece of wood with a phoenix feather in it, it's doing a lot of connecting the dots.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys think.
Also, I'm surprised that when Voldemort is asking for everyone else's wand, that there isn't more of a, recognition of, the wand betrayal. I'm surprised that there isn't at least a little bit of the wand fighting back. Especially when wands apparently just do their own magic to protect people.
Voldy's a smart guy. You're flying in the air. Like I just said,
yeah.
You were complaining about, a stunning spell isn't a killing spell. Well, it is when you're flying 300 feet above the air.
Yeah.
Why couldn't Voldy use his own wand, not attack Harry directly, and blow up the motorbike?
I think that wouldn't be satisfying to Voldemort.
You're probably right.
For Voldemort, it's it needs to be that direct kill so that he did it. It wasn't that Harry died from a fall. It wasn't that Harry died from an explosion. It's that Harry died
No, I get you. You're probably right.
Yeah.
But, there's more ways to accomplish the goal. But, yeah, you're right. You're right in that it wouldn't be satisfying for him. That's not the way he would want to do it. But, yeah, there was a lot happening in this chapter. Can we talk about these 30 Death Eaters, or these 30 hooded figures? Because obviously Stanchion Pike's not a Death Eater.
Yeah.
So you'd imagine, I would go as far as to say minimally half of these are Imperiist puppets.
Yeah.
That are just being like puppeted around this whole thing. And maybe like 14, 15, maybe, I'm being generous, are Death Eaters. I mean, there could be maybe 10 that maybe are Death Eaters.
Yeah, because, I don't know, there might actually be more Death Eaters, just because I'm thinking about when the one went to, like, save the other, and it seems weird that 2 actual Death Eaters would be on one set.
That's a pretty tight-knit group, though. I don't know that Voldy's just making anyone, like, a dark mark.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Still, that's a big number.
Yeah.
The way that this all broke down is kind of crazy. I know we talked about the whole plan and the idea, but just the idea that the Death Eaters came to end this tonight.
Yeah.
Like, they came to end this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Snape gives them the new date, the idea of the plan, whatever. Obviously, we know Snape left out a couple of details.
Yeah.
Actually, he gave them an idea, I think. Didn't he plant the idea in Mundungus to do the 7 Potters thing?
I thought so.
Wasn't that Mundungus's quote-unquote idea?
Yeah.
So he planted the idea to be like, okay, here's a curveball.
Yeah.
That will trip up the Death Eaters. But, so, you know, Snape's still pulling some strings, both ends.
Yeah.
On this whole night. But I know you had issues in the Department of Mysteries where you're like, okay, the Death Eaters really aren't, like, doing kill shots. Advanced magic, yes, but not really, like, here, nope.
Yeah, here it was just green light everywhere.
Yep.
Green light. You don't even need to know what they're saying. It's just green light everywhere.
Yep, Hedwig. And I think that surprised us all when reading this. And I think your comment in the non-spoiler about why, like, it seems like a unnecessary...
Yeah, it's like, well, otherwise what do you do? Like, it's easy in any of the books where they're at Hogwarts to be like, oh, she's in the owlery. Oh, she's mad, so she went for a little flight.
I'm sure she has spoken about why she made this decision. I'm going to put my own spin on it, and this might be true, this might be not. I could just be making this up. But I feel like by killing Hedwig, it's like that final attachment to maybe, like, that youthful innocence. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's also the easiest kill to make early on.
It was the first friend he made in the wizarding world.
Yeah, but I also think that Hedwig's an easy one to off. And if you wanted to strike the tone of the book of like, nope, it's serious now, we're done playing games, you needed to make the death and you needed to make it so that it actually stung.
Well, that's the thing about these chapters, 4 and 5. You get 2 back-to-back.
Yeah.
That are like, I'm sorry, what? You almost get like whiplash of like, you're just recovering from one, and then you get the news of the other one like right out the gate in the next chapter, and you're like, what is going on?
But I also think that that's another one that was relatively easy to...
Yeah.
Why are we being vague? Is the spoiler section?
Moody dies. We're going to get into more of the Moody of it all in
But
this
I think
chapter,
that Moody's another one that was very easy to... Like, no one would have expected Moody to die. But at the same time, like, we never really actually knew Moody.
That's true. We spend a whole book with what we think is Moody, and then it ends up being Barty Crouch Jr. And we get bits of him through 5 and whatever. But
we never really knew. So it's another one that, like, you never would have thought Hedwig would have died. And, like, Moody felt too...
invulnerable? Because, like what you said... leading up to this, why is he with Mundungus? Because he's the best of them.
Yeah.
Which Kingsley, as you know, he's protecting the minister and he's whatever. You're talking about Mad Eye Moody, who might be a little off his rocker, but he's got a resume that is like, well, we're talking about the wizarding world, so parchment, feet and feet and feet long of dark wizards he's knocked out and imprisoned and captured, and some of these guys who he goes up against tonight. He's put in Azkaban once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. Like, he's formidable. Every one of them, the Death Eaters, Voldy himself, Voldy went after him first. Because he's like, oh, he's got to be guarding Harry. He's the best of them. So he targeted him first. Mm-hmm. That tells you right then and there who Mad-Eye Moody is.
Yeah. Well, but I feel like that's what makes him a good target for an earlier death of someone that we know. Because you knew going into this, like, if we got to the end of this chapter and no one died, well, where's the believability in that?
Where's the risk? Like, yeah, if you got out of this and no one died, and I'm sure there were
and also,
quite a few Death Eaters or Imperious people that also died. I'm sure
if
there
you
were
got through this and it was just Hedwig, like, you're telling me that the full-size people didn't get hit, but this little owl did?
Yeah.
Like, and so I think it was you do Hedwig in the moment because you're not going to kill off Hagrid, you're not going to kill off Harry in chapter 4. But Hedwig very quickly makes it a, like, oh, no, we're real now. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, we're going kill shots. And then Moody is the, like, whoa. Because, like, who else could you kill off that it would actually have, like, no one's going to care if Mundungus dies.
Kingsley, I don't think, has the emotional impact because we haven't spent that much time with
Kingsley,
them.
you're kind of like,
Fleur would be a shocker.
Yeah, like, Kingsley, you're kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of a bummer. And Bill and Fleur, you need them to
There's still plot points ahead.
Yeah, like, you need their wedding to happen. And you're not going to have the trio. She probably already had the twins figured out.
She also took an ear from George.
So it's like she made sure that there was battle wounds and actual loss to kind of set the tone for the rest of the book.
Yeah. Like, this is an end-of-book style event in the 4th chapter, which is crazy. I think that's the thought that I had while reading this chapter the first time was, okay, we're going.
Hedwig dies, and then the chapter ends with, like, Hagrid is just spread on the ground, and you're like, oh God, oh God, 2?
We didn't even mention that. We end the chapter with Hagrid sprawled out on the ground after we know he jumped onto a broom that the broom couldn't support, so they just fell. Yeah. You don't know how far, and you know he's a durable guy, but that is a cliffhanger where you're like, No, you just took Hedwig. You cannot take Hagrid. You cannot do both. That's quite the cliffhanger to leave on.
Yeah.
And that is quite the, not so much cliffhanger. We talked about a bunch of spoilers, but that is how we will wrap up this episode. So we will wrap it up here. We've talked about a lot of stuff. We really want your input. Let us know what you guys think of this chapter. This is honestly, this is probably one of the bigger chapters that I can think of. So let us know your thoughts on it. Let us know your thoughts on some of the things Julie and I debated. Give us a 5-star review. Share this podcast with everybody you know that likes Harry Potter. Helps us grow. Let us know what you guys want us to do after this book, because this is it. And we have to start planning the rest of this. So let us know, and we will see you back here next week. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HogwartsAPod.